Thank you, and next is Dr. Mary Scollay.
So I'm going to try and give you the Evelyn Wood version of what we've accomplished since 2006. In 2006, we established a 3-year plan, a series of goals, and just to refresh your memory, or those of you who weren't familiar with them, year one, it was our intention to increase the number of participating racetracks, generate some composite population statistics, and form an advisory committee to make sure we were headed in the right direction. Year two would be an expansion of data analysis, and we would start to attempt to identify markers for horses at increased risk of injury. Year three, we would then move on and hopefully by then have a confidential online reporting into a secure database. And when asked when this would start, I said I thought that it was realistic to expect we'd start January 1st, 2008. So where are we? This is the committee that's been formed, and it represents a pretty broad swath across the industry: researchers, practicing veterinarians, regulatory veterinarians, racing commissioners, horsemen's groups. And so I think that we have the opportunity to handle this information very responsibly and to the benefit of the industry, because all the parties involved will have a say in how we move forward. So where are we now? And this to me is just so exciting. March 17th, St. Paddy's Day. 2,235 reports have been filed by regulatory veterinarians representing 42 racetracks. This is just huge, folks. I cannot believe the level of support that we've gotten from everyone. And to my regulatory colleagues out there who've done the work and made this work, thank you so much. They've gone to their commissioners, their racetrack managements, and they've sold this project, and it's just been huge. As you saw from Brad, the online injury reporting, which was in year three, is scheduled for launch sometime this spring. We've contacted Dr. Ashley Hill, who's an epidemiologist at Colorado State University, and she's very excited about looking at the data for us. And we've been contacted by the quarter horse racing industry, and they're interested, and they are currently looking at the form that we use for the thoroughbreds to modify it to be relevant for quarter horse racing. So we're already expanding into other breeds. Okay, and so here we go, the $64,000 question. Everybody submitted the data, so you want numbers back. And what we've got here, this is data that I released early this fall, and it was preliminary. All the stuff that you're seeing, oh, why did those numbers go funny again? They were all lined up this morning. God. It's the Mac PC thing. This is unfortunate, and I apologize. They looked really nice at 4:30 this morning. Okay. So I'll walk you through this. Now, these were preliminary numbers generated this fall, and the composite 143,421 starts were represented in the population that we looked at, and there were 234 fatalities, 10 of which were not musculoskeletal related, which comes out to a composite fatal injury rate of 1 per 613 starts, or 1.63 fatalities per 1,000 starts. And that 600 number, that's a number that had kind of been passed around over the years anecdotally, and so it was in some ways reassuring, not that it's a good number, but it was reassuring to know that we kind of knew where we were going in. So breaking it down into dirt, synthetic, and turf, dirt we had 90,842 starts with 163 fatalities, 1 fatality per 557, which comes out to 1.79 fatalities per 1,000 starts. Synthetic, we had 27 fatalities and 22,614 starts. You guys can see the numbers, and now this is not going to work because there's a little red circle that's going to fly out and mean nothing. Yeah, okay. I'm starting to regret that Mac. Okay, the bottom line is comparing fatality rates between dirt and synthetic. We had 1.79 or almost 1.8 fatalities per 1,000 starts on the dirt, and on the synthetic surface we had 1.2 fatalities per 1,000. That's a 30% reduction in fatalities. That's huge. I was very excited. Turf is a completely different animal. I put the numbers in there anyway, but I think everybody's main focus right now is synthetic surfaces, dirt surfaces. Where are we? Where do we need to get? So this was, everybody was woohooing. So then last night, Brad and I have been in communication, and he's been sending me data. We've had email exchanges at 4 in the morning, and so he sent me a bunch of numbers so that I could get as current as possible with the information that has come in to date. and here it is, thud. The composite numbers, the dirt numbers and the synthetic numbers, fatalities per 1,000 starts, are almost identical. Now, I think this says a couple of things. First, it says that we can do very well with the synthetics. We can do significantly better than the dirt tracks. It also says that we've hit some glitches, and there's a learning curve involved. And when you see some of the other tables that I've got, which will look better than this is horrifying. You will see you'll see some trends and see some interesting things. So I went over these numbers. I did them 4 times because I couldn't believe that I was getting the numbers that I did. But nonetheless, there they are. So I don't think this is necessarily bad news, but it says we've got a lot of learning to do yet. Non-fatal injury rate, oh my God. And you're all gonna have to come up and see my laptop just to see that it didn't look like this when I put it in here. Okay, the thing that we need to see here, the thing that's most important to me, now when we talk about non-fatal injuries, these can range from a bruised foot, a grabbed quarter, something fairly superficial, benign, and something that is gonna resolve fairly quickly, to career-ending injuries that are not fatalities. She's a broodmare now, okay? And the thing that I found very worrisome to me, composite, dirt, synthetic, turf, we're looking at somewhere between 1 out of every 135 to every 200 starts, a horse is injured. A horse goes on the shelf very frequently. And so that's a huge economic impact. That's hard on the racing office, that's hard on the owner, that's hard on everybody, and I think we need to get a better handle on what those specific injuries are and ways to prevent them, avert them, or improve return to function. Okay, another question that had been raised, or comments that had been brought up, were regarding the nature of the injury sustained over the different surfaces. So these little pie charts are simply showing you the types of injuries, non-fatal injuries, sustained over the 3 different surfaces. And what I can tell you, when you look at synthetic and turf, you'll see N under there, N 110, N 101, and then dirt's 410. The numbers for synthetic and turf are all reduced because there are just fewer starts over those surfaces. I think that statistically there will not be a significant difference in the types of injuries sustained. I think they're all very similar. Now, what we don't know, and one of the things that we want to look at down the road, is are soft tissue injuries significantly more severe over one type of surface than another? I mean, this is the information we don't have yet. I said when we started this program, we weren't going to answer a lot of questions, but we were going to be able to ask better questions than we have been, and I think that's where we're going with this. Fatal injuries by age and surface, and I tried to look at these things a couple of different ways, and the one thing that shows to me that's really, do you guys understand these tables, or is this confusing? On the left-hand side of each pair is the total number of starts broken down into age for that surface. So when it says dirt on the left, you've got 100% of the starts broken down into age categories, and then on the right side of that pair, you have the fatalities on the dirt surface broken down by age, okay? So I thought this was very interesting, that the fatality rate for 2-year-olds on the dirt, 2-year-olds seem to be underrepresented, particularly when you look at the other categories where they seem to be a fairly fairly straightforward relationship. So is dirt protective for 2-year-olds, or does it mean we know how to train on dirt with 2-year-olds? I think that we need to remember that we've got a large sample of horses here, we've got a large sample of starts, but it is still 1 year, and we need to track this out over time. I expect that the synthetic fatalities for 2-year-olds will reduce. A lot of the racetracks that reported this year, this was their first year racing over synthetic surface, so it was new to everybody. And the learning curve, I think, is an important thing to remember with the synthetic surface, but I did think that that was an interesting thing that I wasn't expecting to find. And some of you may notice over here on the right that there seems to be a disparity between the 4, 5, and older than 5-year-old horses. I don't think that's significant, again, because the numbers are fairly low there. A couple of horses in either age group can shift those columns fairly significantly, so I don't think that you can draw any significant conclusions there. I do think the dirt 2-year-old thing, that's 400 horses in a large control population. I think that number is valid, and we need to find out why that is. Okay, fatal injuries by class and surface. So we've got claiming horses on the bottom, allowance horses and stakes horses, and I don't think there are any surprises here. Claiming horses are slightly overrepresented, which you'd expect, I think. And it's fairly consistent across the 3 surfaces. There's no real bias there. Fatal injuries by distance and surface, again, amazingly consistent across the racing surfaces, so we really didn't see that running longer on turf was either injurious or protective when compared to synthetic. It all seems to be pretty consistent there. So what are our goals? Because we need to keep moving with this. And I think it actually gets much more difficult from here because we really need to look at training injuries. We need to look at injuries that occurred racing but weren't detected until the next day when the horse cooled out. The numbers we've got are good, but we can do better. So the challenges with that are going to involve participation, because at this point, everybody who's been reporting, they've been regulatory veterinarians. Now we're going to ask for practicing veterinarians to participate, and that's going to be difficult because the level of participation, it's going to be variable. You're going to get compliance from some and non-compliance from others. There's no way to go back and verify the information that you get in terms of completeness. You know, when regulatory veterinarians would submit reports, I could go look at their vets list on Encompass and make sure that we were kind of tracking along the same way and there wasn't a real disparity between what they were sending me and what was actually happening in their population. There are no checks and balances with the voluntary reporting that occurs outside of racing. So that makes, to me, the reliability of the data somewhat questionable, and we're going to have to think really hard about how to move forward with that. Disclosure, balancing the good of the many against the privacy needs of the few, and certainly because of horsemen's concerns about regulatory repercussions, this reporting will be anonymous, which means we're not going to be able to link it to age, sex, race history, exercise history, and a lot of the other things that we're trying to look at with the racing injuries. So the challenge is establishing relevance, because we don't have any control data. If you're looking at training injuries and you can't really quantitate how many horses are training, it's hard to really understand the frequency. You've got off-site training facilities and horses that ship in, and how do they factor into the mix? And I think ultimately that we're probably going to be looking at the training injuries on a local or regional basis as opposed to a national one, at least at this point. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, that the success of this program has depended so much on Mary's dedication and the respect she has amongst her colleagues. And before Encompass was able to make this magic, she was doing a lot of venturing just manually. So thank you, Mary.